We are live.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Aradhana Tewari from Be the Change by Aradhana, the founder of Be the Change page, an access consciousness certified facilitator, empowering and transforming coach. And here today for another talk show with my one of my another celebrity friend. Before I go to the show, I welcome you all here in the space of Be the Change and let you know a little bit about Be the Change. Be the Change is platform where you have been given a question every day to actually introspect yourself and have the courage to bring out your gifts, your magic in the world and share it with the world. So the whole idea is that what I trust in is that everybody's born with a gift and we have been holding those gifts into us, waiting for somebody to ask, what do you know? So this platform really, really asks you, what do you know and what is your gift? And just invites you to come share your gifts and be that courageous in the world because you do not want you get so bored repeating the same things, repeating the same patterns, and you're like, why am I bored? Because you're just repeating, because that is not who you be. So I wonder if you can search with these questions within yourself, that who you be, what you be, and as I always say, you are the master of your own life. You are the creator of your own life. So just start being you and changing the world. So what else is possible? And I here invite every Sunday a person who I think is a celebrity in my eyes, because somebody who had the courage to follow their dreams, follow their heart, and not making themselves wrong and show up in the world and share their gift in the world. So for me, those all people who had that courage, and I am so inquisitive about their lives. How did they come through? Because what we see is always not the hunky dory thing. It's so much behind the camera. Yet they don't give up. Yet they show up joyfully, happily, and they are creating and become an inspiration in the world. So today, as I said, that celebrity, my beautiful friend celebrity, is Kalpana Raghuraman. She is an internationally acclaimed performer, choreographer, dance mentor, author, and scholar. She's also a desired access consciousness certified facilitator known for her sharpness, clarity, humor, and warmth. Kalpana travels the globe creating change in consciousness through her art and facilitation. She blends together beautifully her capacities as an artist with her awareness and talents as an access facilitator. Kalpana is also an artistic director for her own dance company, Kalpana Arts. So here I now welcome Kalpana onto the stage, onto this platform. Hi, Kalpana.
Hey, hi
Hello.
Aradhana, hi everybody.
Thank you for being here. And how did this space get so lucky? I have always been adoring you, always been watching you, and finally today I
Mhm.
have you on this platform. And thank you for being here and saying hello. So would
Thank you for having me. And I was like blushing when you were talking about me here. Celebrity.
Yes, of course. You are the walking, talking celebrity, and I so adore you. And thank you. For me, as you know, you had that heart and the courage to be you, Kalpana. And I was talking with you before the show that how I have seen your journey along and where we were, where we are now. And it's amazing. We are not the same people at all. But
Yeah.
yet, what all have you put into it and what all have you changed and, shifted? I just want you to share it with the world today. And thanks for saying yes to it. So,
Absolutely.
as I start, I always want to start the journey of the celebrity from their childhood. Where do you belong? Where are you coming from? And what all showed up?
Mhm. Yes. So I was born and brought up in the Netherlands, in Europe, and I have my parents are from South India, some Tamilian. So I basically was at home speaking Tamil and English, and outside speaking Dutch. And my mom was one of the first people who had started, like one of the first in the Netherlands to have a Bharatanatyam dance school. She was teaching and performing. Um, so actually, I was raised in, like, with her teaching at home and in some other places, and I would join her and follow her. And I was also, doing that besides school always. And I think I was 5 or something when I was on stage. So that is kind of how I grew up. Very mixed, like having Dutch friends and then also Indian culture at home. So a big mishmash of all that, and it ended up making me choose to study cultural anthropology. So I have a master's in anthropology in the Netherlands. I studied where I also studied about different cultures and medicine systems of different cultures, and then a lot about arts, since I was also looking at what ways I could include dance. I was never, when my mom was teaching, I was really like a brat. I wouldn't come to class, or I would come and be talking to the kids and getting in trouble. And so afterwards, and my mom never forced me, she was smart. She's like, if I, and afterwards I asked her, she's like, no, I knew that if I would make you dance, you wouldn't do it. So I just had to like let you choose, which was actually really smart. But sometimes I was like, why didn't you make me dance? I would have been better now. And then by myself, I started to choose dancing more. I mean, it was something I always did, but it was just something I did. And it was something so natural that I didn't really commit to it or was that present with it, I feel now. And I started to get more into it, and then so I studied anthropology, and I wanted to study about performing arts, and I went to India for my master's thesis, and I did research in Bangalore. So otherwise, during my childhood, every summer we would go to Chennai to visit family and travel a bit, and have our summer holidays really in India.
I know.
And then that
Yeah,
was
I
yeah.
know that's a question that arises that of course you from the South India, been born and brought up in Dutch land, and it's like, was there any thing around your color and your, because
Mm,
India, what did you ever face that at all?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's I we I was raised in a neighborhood that was pretty much white,
Mhm.
and in those days, it was 70s. There were people from different cultures, but not that many. And I definitely was faced with being teased, being, yeah, like being, what do you call that? There's a word for it. For bullying, getting bullied for having darker color. um so yes, I had quite a bit of that, not like a lot, but enough moments that I remembered. And it was it did um create some kind of,
Friction.
yeah. And it was a bit like, because then in the Netherlands, I was like this dark girl who was Indian, and then when I would go to India, I would be the Dutch girl who
Wow.
speaks Tamil with a funny accent. So it was like, so the friction was like, where the fuck am I okay, because I
Mhm.
was always an outsider. And
Mhm.
so there was this big thing about becoming an insider, which is perhaps something we all have in some ways with friends, but with this kind of difference of color and difference of background, it was more present in my life. And I think I went through like moments of it was okay, and moments that it was like up again and it was intense and hard. It was definitely something that I was busy with. And then actually what happened is I was found my way. I remember that there was this moment, I literally, there was like an energy change that I kind of was like, well, I'm going to make it work, because I had quite um like not so many friends. I was the last person who was chosen if there was a game. Nobody invited me to party. I was really like the boring colored kid. And I there was this energy change that I still even remember, that I was walking to school on the through the this field, and something like, I literally remember going like, this is that's just got to change. And that change was actually, suddenly I started to find ways to be with people and have friends, and found a little bit more ease with everything.
Mhm.
And I went to high school, and I really found more ease with all that friction. And then actually, I got my dad asked if I wanted to go to an international school. There was an international school not far from there, and the last 3 years where I could go, and there was no reason to go because I was happy, but there was this energy that was like, just go, and it made no sense. I just woke up one day and I said, I'm doing it, and it was such a great choice, because I went to a school with people from all over the world, and everybody was different, and suddenly this difference was like so embraced, and it opened up my world in many ways. It really changed a lot for me. So I felt like all these this contraction and this conflict kind of was moving and changing, and that choice really allowed me to be like, hey, yeah, we're all different here, and we're all weird here.
which we are anyways in the whole world, but we never
Yeah,
acknowledge
and at that age you don't know that yet.
yeah,
So
yeah. But did that anyways affect your any of your on your psyche, or how to grow up, or you were less than anybody or more than anybody? Was it
I
like
think I definitely had this thing of either like I had moments that I was like, oh, I wish, I wish it wasn't necessarily that I felt I wish I wasn't Indian, but there were moments that I wish my parents were probably doing things that my friends' parents were doing, or, or I couldn't go somewhere because we were having puja at home. And I'd be like, why do we have to have a fucking puja? Like, why am so definitely there was that. And then when I would go to India, I was also like sometimes I wanted things that weren't there because that in those days, especially, was India's changed a lot as well. So there was definitely it did like it does affect how you look at things, and it did definitely create some kind of questioning that might have not been otherwise. And then at the same time, I think those questions actually allowed me to choose that school and choose different things. So in the end, everything can be a gift if you want it to be. It definitely if it was definitely like not all like yay, it was definitely there was quite a lot of intense moments. Yeah. Yeah.
so?
And
Like listening to you, it's so amazing that how you brought the change yourself, because you were willing to change, and it's so simple. Like the moment you said, "Oh, fine, yeah, this has to change," and the moment you asked for the change, how the changes started showing up around you.
yeah, and it's funny because actually that I just shared with you, I've never like verbalized it the way I've just done that. So it's a thank you for that. It's kind of like an acknowledgement for myself even as well. It's
Wow.
yeah. And it's funny because at home I was this loud, very expressive girl that and and in school in those days before that change happened, I was a very quiet girl and I was unhappy. I mean, if you see pictures of me, I'm like, oh my God, I was like not, school photos, I was always like not happy. And then with that change, yeah, something
Yeah.
really changed.
So you always knew how to change everything. So it's not that you're waiting for others to change us.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah,
Yeah,
true.
that's amazing.
True.
That's
Mm,
what I love about talking to you all. Like it's like such a journey. I'm like, wow, that's
yeah.
and we keep waiting all our lives that somebody outside us will help us changing it, in
Or
spite
comes
of
and
that
tells us.
coming. Yeah, but I think
Yeah.
that's when the whole access theme comes, is just ask a question, and it's
Yeah,
not about access. It's just giving you a reminder that just ask a question, because
exactly.
you have been doing that and being that, but never acknowledged that. That is
Exactly.
uh,
Yeah, true.
that is so beautiful. So yes, from coming from that journey, I'm sure you grew up in college, and you and I love, as I was talking to you about your marriage and your relationship, because you have a very different relationship. You have a very different marriage, and again, you are not married a Dutch, or you haven't married an Indian.
No.
Yeah, can we have a story?
Yes. Well, I'm gonna do a little pre thing also. Like, of course, my Indian parents wanted me to marry an Indian Brahmin Iyer boy, and I that didn't really work. And I was also like, we get projected at what we should choose, right? And there was moments that I thought like it was always a bit like, "Ugh," and then it just was never really working. And people were like, "Yeah, you should. There are no Indian boys in the Netherlands. You should go to America." And I'm like, and do what? Hang out and wait for like it was like this kind of stories that people were telling me. Or, go to India for a holiday, or you go to your cousin's wedding, and then everybody goes, next time should be your wedding. And I'd be like, oh my God, you guys. So there was a lot of that. And that was also sometimes I'd really be annoyed. And a lot of times I'm like, you guys think I'm really sad, but I'm really happy, like this idea that you cannot be happy if you're not married. And then I met Serge May, who's my husband, in a dance festival. We were both he was performing in this international festival, and that festival had like a 5 day choreographic lab, they called it. Like, they invited choreographers to work together, and so they had invited two choreographers from the Netherlands, and I was one of them. So we met there, and he's from West Africa. He's from Burkina Faso, a small country that is next to Mali, which is well better known, an Ivory Coast. And we met, and I had gone to Mali before myself for dance research. So we kind of had, and I spoke some French, and his English is okay, but his French is better. So I was one of the few people in that group who spoke French. And then I had also gone to West Africa. So we had some connections, and then we started to talk, and then And then I was telling my parents that I liked this guy from Burkina Faso, and they're like, "What?" And then I remember I was trying to tell my dad I liked him, and my mother wasn't there. I think she was in India or something, and I was having dinner with my dad, and I was like trying to tell him about him, trying to tell my dad, and I was like, yeah, pa, da, 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 da. And he was like, yeah, yeah, give me the yogurt. And then I'm like talking about him again, and then he'd be like, can you give me the, and I was like, hey, and he's like, I'm listening, but I need a little bit time to reprogram my head that you're interested in an African man, and he literally said that to me. He said, you have to give me a little bit of time because I need to reprogram myself. um, and I was like, fair enough. That's really fair because I didn't expect it myself. So I thought that was pretty cool.
But then that was very clear that you were not asking him, you were telling him.
True. Yeah, I love it. I love that. I was informing and I was telling my mom, and she was a bit like, yeah, she was explaining me about crushes, and I was like, Mom, I know the difference. But she had to do her mom thing. She was like, are you sure? You're so different. And I was like, actually, African culture and Indian culture are so much closer than Western culture and Indian culture. Family, food, very similar.
Yeah.
So then when he came, we had a show. We had in that festival we had gotten to do projects together, so I was actually doing something with him, and so he came over for dinner, and then she really liked him, which helps, of course. And then we had a tour in India with that same piece, and so we were invited for a festival in Bangalore. And then we went to visit my parents, and he was so nervous to meet my dad. And my dad like interviewed him. He's like, why do you like my daughter? And are you sure? Blah, 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 blah. And then, I mean, actually, everybody really fell in love with him. So they were all like, he's awesome.
Yeah. The beauty that I've seen about your relationship, Kalpana, is like you both travel like how, and you just meet like you meet like friends at times, like which is
Yes.
like so strange in my world, and I loved it. It's like you once in a year or 6 months. I just always felt that you hardly meet him for like a week or 10 days, and you're meeting as you're meeting a boyfriend for like 10 days, and I'm like, is it, are you married? Are you not married? That was so weird in my world. So how does that work, and how is that so different than anything else? That's when I wanted your relationship thing to be spoken here.
Yeah. Well, I think because when we met, we were both already traveling. So he was living in France, I was living in the Netherlands. He was traveling with his dance company, I was also. And so we were used to this traveling aspect of the other person not always being in one place. So in that way, it was kind of already always like that. So it's like kind of our normal, that we're moving.
Mm-hmm.
And then me with my connections to India also, and him with his connections to Africa, and he's a lot doing a lot of work there. So that was already always there. And then we're also two very free spirits. We're really free spirits. So we also, a lot of people said, oh, you're both choreographers, are you going to now change your two companies into one? And we were like, and then we talked about it, and we were like, just because we want to share our life together doesn't mean we have to do every single thing together. And I think we both recognized, like, not that we don't want to, but it was more like that's not natural, like what he's doing with his company is so different than what I'm doing with my dance. It would be forced just because you're married. So we really were clear in that way, that we allowed each other to do what we wanted to do. And there definitely always have been moments that he would have rehearsals and I would go and see, or we would discuss, or I watch a video of my rehearsals and I ask him for his advice. It's not a separation, but it was not a forced bringing together. So in that choice, that automatically, with his activities somewhere and mine, that not seeing each other was kind of a natural
So
result
the
of that
insecurity
choice.
never turns in. The
Sorry.
insecurity of each other never turns in.
Well, I remember that there was a moment that we had a conversation about flirting,
Mm-hmm.
and then I remember he was saying, like, well, we're both very public people, like, especially with shows. And he's like, well, that we, like, it was very much like, well, we're not going to cut off our sexual energy, we're not going to, like, not talk to people just because we're married, but we also know what we're choosing as a future together. And definitely there's been insecure moments, I would say, especially in the beginning, that I would be like, "You didn't take the phone. Where were you?" And then, or he was like, "I didn't, I called, you didn't pick up." And and there's been moments for sure, and it's not always easy. And there's moments that you are like, this fucking phone, I just want to talk to this person, or I want to see him and touch him. So it's definitely not easy always. I think because both of us are so inspired in what we are creating in the world, and we support each other in that, that there is this, okay, I don't have to explain to him why I want to go to facilitate a class somewhere, or he doesn't have to explain to me why he's going to do that tour that means that he's not going to see me for 2 months. And
Yeah.
then there's just the reality of, you wake up and you're like, I'm lying alone in my bed and I'm married, or or I want to hug because I feel like shit and he's not here. So definitely, we have a very good kind of, it's not a system because it's different every time, but we definitely are used to reaching out to each other and talking to each other. So actually, we usually kind of talk in the morning and the evening, or at least message or find each other, and we look to find each other. We're not waiting for the other person. So in the beginning, I remember I'd be like, "You didn't call me." He's like, "Yeah, but you could have called me." And I'm like, yeah. Like this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we really found a way of just really being connected and being in touch, and sometimes it just doesn't work with the time difference. I remember there was one moment I was in Bangalore for a project, and he was in Africa, and the time difference was, or he was in Australia, no, he was in Africa, and the time difference was so bad. He finishes rehearsal and I would go to bed, and then it just doesn't work. And sometimes it's really annoying and you're just like, ah. And other times it's really fine and you're just happy that the other person, and you can do what is, inspiring.
But that, I mean, I think it's so different in the Indian culture or the South African culture, what you both are living. So, I mean, that's such a huge example. I've always adored that about you and your relationship. Like, I love that. This is like so much of
Thank you. It does ask a lot of trusting yourself and your awareness.
that.
Like you said, like with the insecurities, yes, there's been moments for both of us that we're like, hey, like, are you are we still okay, or something is awkward. And then we both change a lot, and with access classes we change so much. And then he would be like, I cannot find you energetically, and I'll be like, oh, okay, I changed, but I didn't include him. So he's very energetic, so he really literally, or he'll be like, you seem so far away. Or if he's that way, I'm like, oh baby, you seem so far away, you need to include me energetically. So we really literally, but the communication has been in that way a key, like really like being present with each other. Yeah.
So those are the keys, like to be present with each other and being trusting your knowing. Any other tip that you would like to give it to everyone? Because
And also really, like, if something is not working, like we tend to go like, you did this, or I didn't like you did that, or you didn't do that. And it's really like, this one, it's like, actually, if you look at what is it doing to me and what is it saying to me about what's up, like where am I, what, like asking questions about yourself, and then also just really bringing it up. And not, a lot of times we wait, and then it festers and it becomes like this big thing. And then it was like, I we are, if something's up, it's like, hey, that was weird, or what's up. And so actually you just kind of don't allow anything to stop you. If there's something up, you just bring it up. And yeah.
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 So what is that one thing that actually is like makes you keep going on and having it on and just like just being you? Or is it like what is it? What is that energy of like having this as well as creating I mean, I just feel that it's a sense of being added to each other's life and
Yeah,
much more. So but
I
any layman, you
I
know.
think it's what you said, like adding on to each other is so much more than you alone.
Yeah.
That, and then also, like, we have a lot of times learned that the support of somebody comes through them being next to you, you know and in this way, and in this way somehow the support is like not being next to each other, so it's like opposite. But it's like actually knowing, like, this guy doesn't judge me, this guy is excited for what I'm creating, and supports that. And so there are moments that we've had that we didn't see each other for like weeks, and then we'd see each other one night, and the next day I had to go for a class, and we'd have like one night after like 6 weeks or something. And then it's like, sometimes you go into, oh, I just want to stay home, and it's like, no, I have to go facilitate this class, and that's what's required. Or he, you know, like, or I come home and he just left because he has a show or he has a rehearsal or he has a meeting, and it's like those moments. Sometimes you get a bit like, and it's like, yeah, no, no, this is required. So it's really actually also both of us really committed to creating what we desire to create in the world, and knowing that that's not personal. It's like, I'm not leaving already because I don't like you enough, you know? It's because that other thing is required. And that really makes it like, and if I could do it without you, but why would I? You're so wonderful. So it's like this added energy of supporting each other. So this is, I think, also one of the things, like, yeah, somebody to
So
share with.
different. This is so different, Kalpana. I must say that, and I must acknowledge that about you. I have always adored this. This is so different, and this is like my ask in the world that this is possible, guys, rather than stopping each other and using that sexuality as a reason of like a man can do or a woman can't do.
Yeah.
Because to me that is so you. It's like wow.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
that energy and showing up in the world for that. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for that. And yet, coming from there, I've also seen you, I mean, there's so much to talk about you. It's like, have you also need to talk to entities. And I remember the first time I saw you, you had a lot of patches and stuff, and,
The skin.
skin
Yeah.
issues and stuff, and they're all gone. What was that? And I think with the talk to entities, it's like people are so scared. So could you talk about, then we'll come to
Yeah.
what you think about it.
Absolutely. So I've always had a very dry skin, and I used to have like kind of dry patches on my skin and face mostly, and my neck as well. And I it changed as soon as I started to do bars, and then in the foundation class, my first foundation class that were not that facilitator didn't speak so much about entities. Then I did my second foundation class that was a rewrite of the manual with Gary in Rome, and he started to talk about entities quite a lot, and my body was really like, there was such a strong like, okay, there's something with my skin and this, but it didn't make sense because I didn't really know much. And Shannon O'Hara, was the creative talk to the entities, was in that class. So I went up to her and I said, hey, I have this thing with my skin and something with entities is just popping. She's like, well, we could just do a session. So I did a private session with her, and then it just became clear that that was my refusal to be aware of the entities that I was aware of was creating the itching or the dry skin. And so as soon as I actually embraced that and stopped pretending that I wasn't aware and acknowledged that I was aware, my skin really changed, like like drastically, and it went really fast. So I did a session with her, and then a few months later, she was actually coming to the Netherlands to do a class. So I went to do a class with her. And then, yes, after that, I started to do more classes, and it just started to change by itself, really. It was that willingness to embrace a capacity that I wasn't aware of.
So you know how people take those capacities of entities as like they'll kill you, you'll have the depression, or you're scared, and like you had the patches on your face, and people can't take that as that is a kind of an awareness. So could you put more clarity for people who are here today, and because who are scared of the ghost, don't want to talk to about the ghost, and they're like, oh, they'll kill up, or have the
Yeah,
certain.
yeah, they'll be doing bad things to us, or we'll be under their control. Well, it's actually basically we all have a lot of capacities. This reality, this world is not necessarily so much interested in your capacities. It's more interested in how you conform and fit in. And so when we have capacities and we're not encouraged to acknowledge or recognize them even, then if you don't acknowledge it, it kind of works against you. So like when you're aware of entities, your body literally goes, hey, there's entities here. It's like it's hot, the sun, the body is telling you it's hot, the sun is there. Or my cup is cold, the water is icy, so my hand is going there and my hand feels the cold. So your body is informing. But when you're not, in a way, shown that that information is an awareness, then and you bastardize it, you twist it, and then it's not like the entities made my skin bad, or it's not like the entities, some people have other stuff with bodies, but it's actually the response of repressing or suppressing something that is actually available. And so the entities, in my case, it was really like, hey, they want to hang out, they want you, they're here, and your body's telling you, but you're refusing it, you're doing this, and you're trying to ignore it. And as soon as you ignore, if you're pushing something away, you're basically defending against, and it's going to push back, and that creates the friction and the conflict. And so entities are not good or not bad, they are just there, beings without bodies, people, but also other beings. And this we, Indian culture, so many cultures, if you look, they all have that awareness in their culture, in their traditions, like the knowledge and the acknowledgement of their existence is there. It's just gotten very bastardized into, like you said, like scary, or they'll kill you, or you're going to turn into a monster, or whatever, blah blah. But that's always to not be in your awareness.
You mean it's not again entities, it's you, Kalpana?
My gosh, god
I,
damn it.
I,
Yeah,
I thought this time it's going to be entities who's taking over us, but no,
exactly,
you allowed them.
exactly, exactly.
That is so funny in my world right now. It's
Yeah,
never about money, it's about you. It's not about entities, it's about you. So it's how you kind of perceive them and create them in your world. Isn't that
exactly.
so? It's so funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I hope it helps people who are watching it. And guys, ghosts are not scary. Things are not
Ghosts are not
ever
scary.
scary. Nothing is ever scary other than you, yourself.
I love that. You know who's scary? You.
You.
It's
Awesome.
hilarious.
That is so amazing. So you've been into Access for years now, and you've been to enjoy your business. You I think you've done various fields in Access. There's nothing that you've not done probably.
Most,
But
there's a few.
mostly, yeah,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like yet you chose to be the more of an entity facilitator or a joy of business facilitator because that really excites you. So, coming from not talking about them, but it's about your instinct. What do you know that you always knew, but then Access made you have that
Hmm.
that you knew?
I love your questions, Aradhana. It's really awesome. Yeah, because it's like interviewing is such an art. It's really
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you. Well, I think one of the things that I realized, because when I started Access, I was only dancing. I was creating performances. I was dancing myself also and teaching a little bit. I was teaching a lot before, but not so much by then. Is that I was using questions to make a performance, but I never realized. And so when Access was talking about asking questions, it's like, oh, but that's what I do when I make a piece. Like I'm actually asking questions and I'm actually talking to the piece that I'm making. I'm actually like being that energy without realizing it. And so I started to really, that was one of the first things that immediately was like, oh, but that's what I'm actually doing. And same way with the body, because I was dancing all my life, there were all these ways that I was following the energy of the body without noticing that that's what I was doing. It was more like, oh, it worked. And it's like, I don't know why, and then I realized, oh, but I was actually following the energy, and I was actually living a lot of light and heavy, following what's light and not following what's heavy. So those things really showed me, like in the dance, it was really clear straight away. Um, and also because creation, because in Access we talk a lot about creation. And I remember because I did my first bars foundation, and in those days level 2 and 3, what's now COP, with my husband, with Serge. He's not at all really into all of this stuff, but he was also like he saw he listened to a few things and he got really excited, and he wanted to go to the class with Gary. So he's like, okay, I guess I have to do foundation and bars then. And for us, like, because we've always both of us been creating a lot, the conversations about not creating your life was a bit like, what do you mean not creating your life? We're actually, both of us never had like a full-time job. Like we were always creating our own work and our own business, and that's been always like, for both of us, we've always been creating a lot. So it was interesting to be like, oh, that's also not normal. Like some, or like not everybody does that. We, because there was a lot of, we both had a lot of awareness of stuff that we thought was normal, that was not necessarily normal for a lot of people. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so that I remember both of us were like, oh wow. And then really the energy of creation, the love for creation, is something that has allowed me to create my dance company, and for him as well. And that energy is something that Access is so much about. It like, it shows you like to activate your capacities and to embrace them and to go forward and out create yourself. And so that energy was there, but it was not as pragmatic always, and there was a lot of judgment, especially in the arts field, like judgment.com. So it's like a lot of
In
judgment.
every field, Kalpana, every field, it's judgment.com.
True, true, true. You always feel like it's it, true. And so it was like, oh, but now I can do it in a different way. Or I hadn't been judging, but I didn't realize I hadn't been judging till I realized that that was, So just a lot of things kind of became clear.
Mhm.
Um, but this what you said, like I've done a lot of specialties, like this energy of creation is very much, has actually always been a very much in my life, and access actually allowed me to acknowledge it and to have more of it. Yeah.
So, what is it? Can you share with us? What is it that you know about creation that no one else knows?
I think that I know that it's just so much fun. It's
What
so,
do you mean by creation when you talk about creation? What is
when you
creation?
talk about creation, it's really anything that you want to put out into the world, that can be from, it's like really like everybody has something that they know and that they can put out into the world. It can, in my case, it's through bodies and music and dance, but it's also through classes and through just like a book or like anything, right? But like it's this energy that is so vibrant and so happy to exist and to be.
Mhm.
And what I would say, like what I know about creation, is that it's so much easier if we don't think about it. Actually, it's easier than you think. It's like, yeah, just don't think. It's actually really easy, if you're willing to follow the energy and have fun with it. Because I also realized that I had a really few interesting conversations with Serge. This was a few years ago, where we were talking about how in dance I was actually more careful than in access, because with access I had no reference points. I was like, I want to create a class. Okay. And in dance, it was like, oh, this is right. And I used to dance there. And I learned this. So there were all these reference points that I was still like allowing to dominate. And when I was creating with Access, there was no reference points. And I was like jumping in and just going for it. And that is actually the creation energy, like jump in and go for it. There is actually no need for reference points. And if you have them, just say goodbye to them. And that was really for me, that conversation with him. I remember I was like, holy shit, I'm actually allowing those reference points to mean something.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
no references helps you creation, but people make money as a reason of not creating.
True story. True
That's
story.
funny.
Very well said. And but it's also like this thing of jumping in and going for it. Like I think that's also something that I'm like, I just jump in and go for it, and then we'll find out. It'll bring something, and that willingness to fall on my face in a
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
So you do so many workshops, and I remember once you were in one of the classes with Dean, you were talking how you are combining the symphony of possibilities along with your dancing, and then dancing. And I was like, I haven't yet been able to see one of your performances, though. Like it's always there with me, in spite of you coming to India, and I wasn't in India at that point of time. And what will it take for me to watch it with ease? So it's like I've always been very curious that how you actually sense energies and combine them and then put it into the dance format. And I'm like, who would like to miss that kind of a dance performance? Like, it's just vibrating. So can you talk like when you actually came up with this whole thing of energy of in that communion of that whole symphony of possibilities into your dance? Was it a difference? Was it like what was it? What how do you create there?
Mm. I think it's what I became aware of, or what occurred, is that the more I was becoming this energy of symphony of possibilities, the more I could allow that to be there during the creation in the studio. I mean, like I said with Judgment Land, when creating a performance, a lot of people think that I actually create everything and then I teach it. But actually, the way like my style and more people make it like this is I have a concept and I have ideas, but I don't really have necessarily, you know, movements ready. I have ideas that I want to work on, but it's really constantly, okay, I want to work with this idea of movement. I want to do something with this rhythm, or I want to research this emotion or this energy. And then we look for movements, and each dancer brings stuff, and I take stuff from each dancer because they have their own way of moving. And then I ask them to, can we do it quicker? Can we change it? Can we break it up? Can you teach them? But then can we do it? I do all this mixing max, but it's really like I sometimes say it's like a lasagna. There's so many layers. And if you look at where we started and what happens to that scene at the end, you're like, wow, what happened? It's like all this time asking questions and looking what's required.
Mhm.
What I get, what with this conversation with Dane is also when I realize, like, hey, that energy of symphony of possibilities is this energy of trusting and of energy of letting those molecules of the world and the universe contribute and do their thing. And it's like me not being so judgy anymore and not having so many reference points anymore literally allowed me to relax and lean into that energy and allow that energy to show and guide and contribute.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
did you have that fear of losing or failing at times with that? And have you ever failed?
Oh yeah. So I think every time I make a new performance, I'm like, okay, now everybody's going to find out that I'm a fraud. It's like every time it's nearly like, okay, now people are going to find out that I'm fake. Now you're going to know that I suck. It's so, yeah, and maybe
What do you
not
mean
every
when
time,
you
but a
say
lot
a
of times.
fraud? Let's bring it out on public today. What is that fraud?
That fraud that was
Let's
lucky,
be vulnerable today.
yeah, 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 totally. It's like really okay, she found her way out somehow. She did a good job, but she doesn't really know what she's doing. Like those were all lucky strikes, basically, really. And it's because also, like, you can go, if you don't have a script and you don't have any, actually there's you can go anywhere with the piece. So it's also really like you can choose to not do a scene because you're like, or you stop working on that scene, or you go into that there's so many choices, so there's so many ways like you can go. So when I'm creating, I ask a lot of questions, and then we work, and then I film stuff, and I look at it at night, and then I make notes, and we go back. And so it's this big interaction of energies. And so there's all the time choices to be made, actually, in terms of movement and music and all kinds of choices. And so definitely, um, also because it's like getting to be presented as a product, and then people can come and judge it, right? Oh, I liked her show. Oh, I hated her show. It's like nearly like out for judgment. So I had quite a lot of insecurities about that, especially a few years ago. I remember I had one show that I got a review, and it was like just thrashed, and then the same piece, somebody else was like amazing, and then I was like, wait a minute, what's right and what's wrong? And it really allowed, I was like, okay, if I don't want to be judged, I have to dance in my living room, and then nobody should see it. And I really and so it's also really like willingness to get judged, and willingness for people to hate it, and willingness for people to, because a lot of times people will come and tell you what you should have done. They're like, oh, you should have done that, and you're like, yeah, you should have done that, but this is my piece. But it's a lot of judgments, and it's really willingness to be naked about that, and willing to be vulnerable and be like, this is what I actually want to give to the world. And so there's definitely moments, even with the last piece that I made, which was last December, and then we were touring, and then in March with the Corona, we stopped and we started again, and that piece has changed a lot. But when we did the premiere, I was really like, oof, it was a lot of work, and a lot of, there's a lot of stuff that comes up when you're creating and bringing it out, because there's so many things you could do, and there's so many things that you end up doing. And it's and then also what is interesting is when you're making a piece and you're rehearsing, and even if you have all the light montage and you're just working with your group, as soon as there's an audience, there's a whole different thing that occurs. Like there's a whole different change of energy, and even yourself, because you become aware of everybody else's points of view, you start to see other things. So it's super interesting what occurs when you start to perform. And I keep working on the pieces always. So we perform, and I go, oh guys, let's we have a next show, I'll have notes and I'll be like, hey, I think we should do that faster, or can we have that light cue before, not after? There's always, it's always create, the piece is never the same between the premiere and the last show. It's always changing, but it's like and the insecurities and the reviews, it's all kind of part of it. And there's moments that you're kind of like good to go, and there's moments that you're like, oh, that was not so fun. And it's also like part of the game. It's made me very good with dealing with judgments. So I have to say thank you for that. It's made me really much stronger and able and willing to take judgments. And some moments you're like, wow, wow, okay, what else do I have to choose to be willing to lose this, or willing to fuck it up, or willing to, for it to be a blunder and a failure in the eyes of others. So yeah.
It's amazing, when you see, that's why I rightly said every time a celebrity, because you know how we think celebs don't have issues. It's hunky dory, it's beautiful, it's amazing. But behind the camera, there's so much going on.
Yeah,
See, and
totally.
we get so carried away with just that look, the perfect look.
Yeah, I mean,
That
there's
is,
no perfect, right? There's always so many things going on. What I can say is that since Access, the more I've been, using the tools and stuff, I have had started to have more ease with like people not agreeing. Like even people like, because when you're working, you have your music composer and your light designer and your costume designer and you have all these people who were like, oh, I think you, and sometimes they're like, I'm like, oh my God, I never saw that. Let's do that, right? Like they have contributions, but they also have their points of view that you might not agree with. So I have become, with the tools, it's allowed me to become more clear. Like you might not agree and it's okay, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this, and I'm following the energy. But it's definitely a muscle training.
mhm.
Definitely a muscle training. Yeah.
So now you're being also, let's come to access. It's also like, how people have these point of views that, oh, you have to use the tools. And, I really not, I don't want to do anything. And life can't be so easy just using a tool, and life can't be easy. So can you talk a bit about me? Because you've been following your dreams, you've been dancing, you've been, performing other than access classes. And I think that's more of your work than, I think access is your additional income as well. But yes, your core income was, or the life was dancing,
Before.
coaching
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
access. Now it's like hand in hand, both of them go together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, how did you add that to your life? Like in your dancing, as you have been talking, that, you took away the judgments and use the tools. But at the end, yes, how it is a practice, a muscle. What actually drove you to actually use those tools? And how did you instill them in your life?
Hmm. I think just being tenacious, like what you said, like some people are like, oh, just and it's like, in one way it is being tenacious, like asking questions. I mean, if you start to look at how many conclusions you make, whoa, that's a lot. Or how many times you say, I don't know. And you're like, oh, okay. So actually really being tenacious, and also seeing that these tools work. And so it's kind of like, I'm an idiot if I don't use them. I was smart enough to find access, so I should be at least smart enough to use the tools. Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah,
And
true that.
like how often you think like, how do people do it without the tools? Like right now, especially with Corona, like how do people do it without the tools? So for me, it was a bit of a, of course, this is amazing. Why would I not use it? And
Yeah,
then that, and being tenacious with it, and also like when something is stuck, or when you're having a hard thing about something in your life that's come up, it can be money, can be your body, can be your relationship, actually, like, and like, oh, okay, what am I not willing to lose here? And like actually running that clearing and just fucking going for it on steroids till it changes, like actually really taking the bull by its horns. That's also a little bit my style. Like,
yeah,
okay, this is stuck, I'm stuck here, fucking hell, this has to change. Okay, and I will go through that dark night, if I have to, but I'm not, this has to, so it's also like kind of being demanding of myself to expose myself and be vulnerable with myself. And yes, this is hard, and I'm not stopping, and I'm not going to turn my head away. I'm going to
yeah,
stay and go and do it and be it. So that, I think, for me is very much also like being tenacious.
yeah. Wow. And also, I think while you were talking, I just got that whole sense that how there were no mobile phones earlier, and it's like now we've got used to the mobile phone, right? And why would I not use the mobile? And I'll
Love it. Exactly.
Yeah,
Why
I
would
just felt like, yeah, why would I not use a mobile? Like, if I have a mobile, but I'll go into the room and take the dialing number and
yeah,
go.
or like write a
That's
letter,
the
send
number.
a pigeon.
Yeah, but oh, that's amazing. Thank.
Yeah.
And what is that driving force that keeps you keep going all the time, Kalpana, with that joy, with that?
Oh, wow. That's, I don't know. I mean, I cannot, I think it's something that is just really who I be. Just have this, I have a lot of energy. And I think I definitely have more energy since I started to do Access because I use less energy to judge myself. So definitely have a lot of energy and not so many points of views about what cannot be done. Because I know some people, when I was dancing a lot and then I started to Access dance, people were like, oh, you're going to stop dance now. I was like, no. Or doing more dance and Access, people going, oh, you're going to stop Access. I was like, no, do all of it, right? And so I think for me, I don't have so many points of views about what I cannot do or
Mhm,
what is too much or I don't have time for it,
mhm.
which kind of also allows me to just, yeah, it's kind of
Joy.
who I be.
Joy.
Yeah, enjoy. It's
Joy. It's
too
so
too much
amazing.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't have too much fun, guys. You can't.
yeah. Careful.
Be careful about it. So it's like last not the least, I can keep going on. And I'm loving this whole conversation, Kalpana. It's amazing. So I just wanted you to, because I have always had these guards up when people join Access and they give up their talents.
Yeah,
Like, can you not add this to your life? You don't have to just be a, this or
it all
that.
up. Yeah.
And so could you give a little note on that to people who actually, if I'm a doctor, I'll give up being a doctor because I hate being a doctor. I hate being a lawyer, and now I'll be an access facilitator.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
what?
think you actually already said it, and I totally am with you on that one. It's like it's a pity. Why would you?
Mhm.
Um, the thing is that consciousness includes everything, and it like the tools are applicable to any field of life. So if you're a hairdresser, go use the tools and be an amazing hairdresser in your way. Or if you're a lawyer or an accountant, all the tools can be applied in everything. I think sometimes we are doing something we don't know that we could do something different because in those days, in that time of our life, that's all that seemed available. So we maybe you chose to become a lawyer because that's the only choice you had, or that's the only choice between lawyer and doctor, and you're like, okay, lawyer. And now you're like, dude, I hate this. And what do you know about it that you can still use? So it's also like, don't no need to burn bridges. You can do more than one thing. Which is also like a lot of people to me were like, oh no, you can't do dance and something else. Like, why not? So there's this idea that we have to choose one thing. So like you said, like now I'm a lawyer, I'm like not a lawyer, I'm an access facilitator. And truly, I think end of the day, we want to be a walking, talking facilitation,
Yeah.
not just facilitating when I'm sitting in front of people talking to them and then forget everything, right? It's like living that. And so if you're like that hairdresser or you're you're a construction worker or you're a jeweler, those energies can be there all the time, whatever it is that you do. And you can also facilitate classes. It's not like you shouldn't, but it's not like that's the only way it's nearly like it seems like if you're not doing classes, you're not facilitating, which is such a misconception,
Yeah. And now,
right?
like looking at you, it just shows your bouquet of your life. Just shows me like how beautifully you're conglomerated, like with everything, with your relationship also. You didn't give up yourself and to add him.
Yeah.
And your work also you did not give up. So which is like you never give up on you, which is so amazing. Never give up, never give in, never quit. That's the tagline of this show. I think your whole persona just says that you have never given up. And I would still like to hear a line. What does that mean in your world? Never give up, never give in, never quit before.
I think that's actually really
What does that look in your world? Do you think?
yeah, it's like the energy for me when you say ask that is also like there's there's something possible that each person is so different, and you not giving up and me not giving up and giving in allows something to be created that I only can create. And so for me that's also like, yeah, there's so much beauty out there and there's so much beauty you can contribute and be. So that's so fun. Go for it, like it's kind of
Be
like,
that change. Be that change, and be willing to
yeah,
right?
Yeah. And it was funny because the other day my husband was talking to somebody. He's like, it's really easy to stop. It's actually really easy to give up, to be like, you know what, I'm not doing this. But is that creating actually something more? It's not necessarily. And so it's also like, yeah, what if you can actually give yourself that gift of being you and going with that, and that giving, not never giving up, never quitting, for me is that gift of being you. And that's only you can do that, and only you can be that.
That's so beautiful. Amazing conversation, Kalpana. So, what would you like to tell people about you? Where would you like to invite them into your classes, into your dances?
Well,
Anything
my
coming? Yeah.
Yeah, my name is my website, so kalpanaraghuraman.com, and that is where you can see stuff about my classes. I have quite a few classes coming up online. I just became a relationship done different facilitator, which is really
Awesome.
exciting. Yeah.
You,
And so
you had to be. You had to be the one.
actually it's funny, in the beginning I was like, no, it's okay. And then I did the class, and then I did another class, and I was like, shit, yes, I know this energy. I want to share it with the world. So I'm really excited to facilitate that. So that's the easiest way to find my classes. I have all kinds of
Awesome.
stuff coming up. And then if you're curious about my dance, it's Kalpana Arts. So the A for Kalpana ending and the A of arts starting are one. So kalpanarts.com. And there's the site is in Dutch and in English, so you can find just what we're up to. Yeah.
Yeah. All the links will be shared in the chat here. If anybody wants to connect, can connect with Kalpana there.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you. Thank you so much, Kalpana. It was an amazing conversation. Thank you for the gift you truly be, the bouquet. It's like the fragrant bouquet. I love it.
Thank you, Aradhana. And truly, what a gift to be here and to have this space. So thank you for creating this and knowing, also knowing what to ask, because I have to say, wow, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kalpana. And thank you, everybody who was here. If you liked it, please share with your friends, make it go viral, and let people see everything is possible. Just that whole joy has to be there and truly be the change that you are here for. And thank you, my team, Sonali, Shivangi, and Umesh. It wouldn't have been possible without you all. Love you all. Thank you. And thank you. And stay tuned and see you next week, next Sunday. Thanks.
Bye.